If you hold stocks or even have savings parked in a 401k, then what's unfolding right now between the Middle East and a small island near Florida could either multiply your wealth or wipe out nearly 40% of it. What no one is openly telling you is that this isn't really about oil. It's about the collapse of a 50-year-old system that has protected the value of your dollar. And that's exactly why all eyes are on the Middle East in the news today. The United States is quietly making a strategic move toward Cuba's hidden mineral reserves, something most investors don't even realize exists. So here's my promise to you. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Cuba, yes Cuba, holds some of the largest deposits of critical resources needed for the next half-century of technology. And more importantly, you'll know which stocks to consider, which ones to avoid, and how to position yourself for what I call the Great Reshoring, possibly the biggest wealth transfer we've ever seen. My name is Felix Prehn. I'm a former investment banker, and I've experienced firsthand, and through my Wall Street mentors, how these cycles play out. I'm also the founder of the Good Academy, where my retired Wall Street mentors have already taught over 20,000 people institutional-level strategies. Let me walk you through a simple three-phase framework of this wealth shift. First, what's happening right now? The petrodollar system is weakening. Second, the Great Reshoring, where capital begins to move next. And third, the new resource boom, where the real opportunities lie. And if you want to learn how to approach this the same way Wall Street does, like we did last year with gold miners, I'll show you real examples. For instance, IAG, which we entered around 6.71, climbed nearly 300% and still holds around 180% gains. GU, which we picked at 1.45, rose roughly 150%. SK, entered at 11.75, is still up close to 200%. I'm not here to promise returns, but I will show you exactly how we identify these moves. This isn't luck. It's not hindsight. It's a structured framework that Wall Street has used for decades, but rarely shares with everyday investors unless they work inside the system. So if you want to learn this, join me live this Saturday. I'll spend about 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, breaking it all down in depth. You'll learn the actual rules and how to apply them to what's coming next, which is exactly what this video is about. If that sounds useful, type skills in the comments and join me at felix.org/training. The session is Saturday at 8 p.m. New York time. It'll be live, interactive, and genuinely valuable. Now, to quickly bring everyone up to speed, what exactly is the petrodollar? Here's the simplest explanation. Back in 1974, Saudi Arabia agreed to sell oil exclusively in US dollars. Why was that important? Because it forced every country to hold dollars in order to buy oil. And how do countries hold dollars? They don't just keep cash, they invest in US government debt, also known as treasury bonds. The result? Massive global demand for US debt, allowing the US to run huge deficits while the rest of the world effectively financed it. So why is this system weakening? Because other economies are rising. Nations like those in BRICS are trading in their own currencies, and geopolitical tensions are pushing countries to create alternative trade systems. This doesn't mean the dollar disappears overnight, but its dominance is slowly fading. Why does that matter to you? It may sound technical, but it directly impacts your money. As countries reduce their need for dollars, they may start selling US bonds. When bond prices fall, interest rates rise. And when interest rates rise, stock valuations typically fall. That's the part you really care about. One of my Wall Street mentors once told me, "Currency shifts create the biggest wealth transfers in history." And I truly believe that's what we're seeing right now. The question is, will you benefit from it, or get caught on the wrong side? If the last couple of weeks haven't felt great financially, then maybe it's time to learn the skills that can change that. Join the training, link is below. Now, what's the US actually doing? There's a major strategic shift happening, something called friendshoring, which focuses on bringing supply chains closer to home or allied regions. At the same time, global instability is rising, especially in the Middle East. The U.S. is no longer acting purely as a global policeman. It's shifting toward a more regional, strategic role. Look at Venezuela. Changes there could reopen access to massive oil reserves that match U.S. refinery needs perfectly. This strengthens U.S. energy independence. In fact, the U.S. has now become the world's largest oil exporter, even surpassing Saudi Arabia. That's a huge shift. So why is Cuba suddenly in focus? Well, Venezuela was supplying Cuba with energy. That's been disrupted. Iran was supporting Cuba financially. That's also been cut. Now imagine a regime shift just 90 miles from U.S. shores. Why would that matter? Because Cuba is sitting on enormous untapped mineral wealth, rare earth elements, cobalt, nickel, copper, even gold and silver. In fact, Cuba is among the top global suppliers of cobalt. And as the world moves toward electric vehicles, renewable energy, AI, and drone-based warfare, all of this requires batteries. And batteries require these exact materials. The problem? Cuba lacks the investment and infrastructure to extract these resources efficiently. But if that changes, if Cuba opens up, who do you think will step in to build the mines, ports, and energy systems? Most likely, U.S. companies. So how do you position yourself? First, don't rush in blindly. Learn the system. That's why I'm inviting you to the training. But broadly speaking, think about mining companies with exposure to the Caribbean, infrastructure firms, and service providers supporting these industries. The challenge is choosing the right companies that require deeper knowledge, which I'll cover in detail during the session. For now, here's a simple action plan. If you're heavily invested in dollar-based assets, be cautious. In my opinion, the dollar may weaken significantly over time. Long-term bonds could also struggle. What we're likely to see is a combination of a weaker dollar, rising inflation, and massive opportunities in emerging tech sectors. So where should you look? Hard assets. When currencies lose value, tangible assets tend to perform well. Gold is one example, but also other industrial metals essential for modern technology. At the same time, focus on opportunities across the Western Hemisphere. Reshoring will create massive growth in infrastructure, mining, and supply chains. Right now, most investors are focused on the Middle East, thinking this is all about oil. But smart money is quietly watching the Caribbean. This shift won't happen overnight. It could take 5 to 10 years to fully unfold. But early movers tend to capture the biggest gains. We saw this pattern with gold and silver stocks. Early investors captured 200% plus gains, while latecomers often ended up with losses. Timing matters, and understanding money flows is key. Because at the end of the day, it's not about predicting, it's about following where capital is moving. The wealth transfer has already begun. And while it may seem harsh, it's very real. The purchasing power of money is declining, and those who stay in cash or fixed income may fall behind. So you have a choice. Stay on the sidelines, or learn how to adapt. The winners are those who understand asset allocation and move with the trends, not against them. And I believe asset prices will continue to outpace currency depreciation. So if you take one thing from this, become an asset owner. But more importantly, learn how to choose the right assets. Join me this Saturday. I'll teach you the exact frameworks that Wall Street has used for decades. Not promises, just real education. Because at the end of the day, the real issue isn't the market, it's the lack of financial education. Think about it. Banks generate billions every year. Do you think they operate randomly? Of course not. They follow structured systems and proven rules. And that's exactly what I'm going to share with you. Join me Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you found value here, share this with someone else. Let's make financial education accessible to everyone. Did you know there's an invisible system controlling nearly every trade in the world? And I'm not talking about supply and demand.